Hello and welcome. This is AndroidCast Show 3.002. I am your host, Seven Knowles, and yeah, I just welcomed you. So, as you see, I'm starting to play with this a little bit more, getting sounds. Apparently, the software just does not function at all with my Bluetooth headphones with the microphone because now it seems to be functioning fine. And it's a learning by doing. And that said, if at any point you feel like you would like to support the show and its equipment upgrades, because I do need things like a proper headphones and a proper microphone, please visit the PayPal link in the show's description. In addition, today's artwork is a QR code for my Instagram. If you would like to follow me over there, I suggest you just scan that right in and go press follow. So I didn't think that I was going to do another episode, um, at least until about the 28th, 29th or so. But then last night I was lying in bed, and you know how sometimes just thoughts run through your head for no apparent reason. And And I was suddenly remembered, I suddenly remembered that about a situation, a story that happened that was very important to me way back in 2002, and how it would be a real shame that if I didn't remember it again, or if it wasn't kept in some form of document. And it made sense to me to use this as a way to further explore how to do podcasting and storytelling. And it is a part of the subject of sex work and my history in sex work. I don't want to get so much into, oh, I did this, I did that. But there are these moments that were really poignant and really human. And um, so I decided that, okay, I'm going to sit here today, take my shower, have my breakfast, make the coffee, and go through this because, as I said, this was an important story to me. And, but um, before I get into that story, I wanted to say that the other day, I got notice that the videos that I hosted for an instructional series for sex workers are finished, and they're going to be coming out online very soon. And I will be happy to share that with you, but I forgot I jumped over that because I didn't look at my notes, and I want to kind of go back to that before I move on into the big story of today. So, about a few weeks ago, well, I'd say maybe about a month ago, I was asked by a friend how I would feel about um, being in some instruction videos for new sex workers in Germany. And for me, this was an absolute no question. Yes, I want to do it because this is really it's just everything that I want to be about. I want to be welcoming and help new people make the right decisions and kind of be that person that I could have used way back in the beginning when I first started. And I did actually have some mentors back then. But it wasn't the same. So I, of course, agreed. I got the director got in touch with me. Everything went by very, very fast, and within 2 weeks, I was standing in front of a camera with my co-host, doing two videos. One is sort of an intro to sex work, where it's like, okay, in this series, we're going to be talking about self-care and the taxes and these things. And the second one was that was about I'm trying to remember, it all happened so fast. I think that was really more about sexual health, like, you know, going to the doctor, getting on PrEP. Because this seems to be a big theme in my head right now. Um, so I'm very very proud of this series. I hope that they decide to further develop it, and if they do so, I hope they decide to keep me included in it. That was a truly wonderful experience. I have to sneeze, but uh, okay. So let's go into the story. So I moved. My first time in Chicago was in 2000, and I had already started officially as a sex worker before then. I came out when I was 14 years old in a very conservative place called Kansas City, Kansas. And this is just where I was living at the time. I lived in many, many places, and Kansas City, Kansas is a bit of a stressful place for me to think about because it was very, very conservative and um, probably full of the meanest adults I had ever experienced in my life. And you know, who would go out of their way to pick on a young gay guy who was just not even quite sure about his own sexuality yet. And so, but when I did come out, I came out during the summer of 1988 or 89, one of those two. I can't remember exactly. 88, I think it was. And I would go to this park called the Liberty Memorial. And that was the gay cruise park. And of course, this was during the height of the AIDS crisis. And I will get into that another time. It's not really relevant to right now, but the first people that I became really gay friends with in the gay cruise park was this pair of hustlers who were twins. They were from Mexico, and they were, um, working the park together. And they sort of took me under their wing, and it's like, okay, you know what, you're very young, you're 14, we don't want anything bad to happen to you, so you just stay close to us. And just from the association, I kind of got an idea about what sex work was, at least from that perspective. And being an uncontrollable 14-year-old, of course, I was very horny and wanting to explore this new side of me and realizing that I have a very big power here in this cruise park. I'm the young boy, and the older ones were circling like mosquitoes and sharks, and so I used that to my advantage, and I call that my unofficial beginning in sex work. And my official beginning in sex work was about 98, 99, so about 10 years later. And I went to Chicago in 2000, um, as a friend of mine invited me to come up and co-produce this feature film for her, that she was making as her master's project for the Art Institute of Chicago. And I fell in love with the city, decided that I was going to go back in 2001. So when I got into Chicago in 2001, I ended up um, really in a cold shower. My experience in 2000 was quite vivid and fun and wild and crazy, but suddenly I was responsible for something of kind of setting my roots into this experience. So I just want to check this is all still working. Cool. um, so I got a last minute apartment place that would take me with zero money. And I got a job in an office that would put me to work immediately. But that's not what I went there to do. I went there to become a like evolve as a sex worker. And my sex work extends back to New Orleans and this little tiny space of time in Kansas City. And I wanted to be in the big city. So I went to this place called the Lucky Horseshoe, which is at the very edge of the gay district of Boys Town in Chicago, and had this very funny introduction to that, like audition. And this was in the first 1 week of me living in Chicago. They got in touch. They called me. They said, "Okay, yeah, we would like you to come in for an audition." And I was like, "Okay." So to explain the Lucky Horseshoe is to explain the diviest, dirtiest, backwoods truck stop stripper club, and then make it gay, and then make it falling apart. And that's sort of what it was. It was the kind of place where it, like, for the first 1 to 2 hours, you walk in, it smelled like ammonia cleaning solution. There were nails hanging out of the wall. Um, it was, I don't know, it was just seedy as fuck, and I loved every single moment of it. The owners, when I first started, there were two owners. One of them unfortunately died, I believe, of a heart attack. The other one was this really wild, mean-spirited older man who would bring his mother in. And his mother was completely unfazed by the whole thing. And I think she was like in her 70s or 80s or something like that. And she was there by my audition. And I remember, like, I was with two other people, and your audition, you didn't get a choice of music. You didn't really know what to do. There was no instruction. It was just get up on the stage and do it. So there's this tiny stage, and they want to know who goes first. And I thought, well, I may as well go first because the other two were looking quite scared. I want this job, and so I'm going to throw in that little bit of extra energy to make them see that, no, I'm here because you're going to hire me. I was very, very confident about myself during these times. So I got up on the stage, and then because there were no instructions, I asked openly, okay, so how does this work? I mean, do I strip down to my underwear or get naked, or do I already have my clothes taken? Am I already in my underwear, or how does it work? And the owner's mother was like, "You do it any way you want, baby." And I just thought, like, oh my God, this place is crazy. So I went through the audition, and of course I got hired because I was just throwing energy out at these people, and started work immediately. And I was very happy and proud to be in this divey ass strip club. So while I was there, I met a lot of wonderful people, and I, I'm gonna kind of name them, but I'm not gonna name them. Like the couple I'm talking about, I'm not gonna name specifically because they are they need to the protection of them needs to just kind of stay in my memories. But some of the other ones, they will be so happy if I name check them publicly. So I'm gonna say I very quickly became friends with the head dancer Walter, and his best friend at the time Brent, and these two were sort of the smart ones because there was a spectrum of intelligence with the dancers, and it's just the way it goes. Okay. um, but they were the smart ones. They sort of ruled the coop, and I instantly connected with them. And then there was and in this group there was Danny, who was this straight-ish. I don't know how to really call that. He was gay for pay apparently, but how people say that, and really they're just kind of bisexual and need to deal with themselves. Um, Most of the time, not all the time, but this was definitely one of those cases, I think. He was a really sweet guy, beautiful, sort of Italian American looking kind of cover boy. And um, then there was Sasha and Michael. Michael was really cute and sweet. He was this very short guy who he would dress up in military uniforms of various types, or worker uniforms of various types, and then strip them off. And you kind of have this Chippendales sort of act going for him. And he was always flirting with me, but he would never go anywhere with it. I think he was another one of those like gay for pay, but he was a little bit more gay and just didn't want to deal with it. Mm, sorry, water. Okay, so then I get to this one night. I am up on the stage. No, this one night I gotta remember this correctly, okay? So one night I go up to the stage, and there is this drop dead gorgeous guy I had never seen before. And it was a Friday night, and this was about within the first month that I was working there. And apparently he only worked one night a week, and his boyfriend was another stripper. And so this guy, his name was Carl. His boyfriend was named Juan. And up on that stage, the first time that I saw Carl, I just was like, whoa, who the fuck are you? And we locked eyes immediately. And he was just one of the most beautiful men I'd ever seen. And it wasn't that he was like overly athletic or something, it was just this energy. When somebody just looks at you in the eyes and they smile, and the smile is so beautiful, and it's like all these chemicals start running around in the brain. That was what was happening for me. And um, at first, um, we had these really funny discussions later, but yeah, so we met that night, and I got to know his boyfriend Juan too, and I thought like this is really exciting. Here is this stripper couple. I wonder, like, do I have a chance with them? And I fell instantly in love with them. And more like fascinated. I had a huge, huge crush on this couple. So we started hanging out, and I would go over to their place, and they had this very big, beautiful, beautiful place. It was I think like in European quadrant meter terms, it would be something like about 300 square meters. And old Chicago, kind of like sort of built up a little bit, but not enough money to really complete it. And and Danny would go there. Sometimes Walter would, but more as like Danny would go there. I would go there, and some of the other strippers that were part of the I guess like how would you say, there was like some of the strippers who were Latino, and they kind of all hung together in sort of a clique, and so they would go over there because one was Mexican. And because of this, I thought that Carl was Latino. I thought he might have been Brazilian or something, just from looking at him. But no, he was actually black. And I came to find that out much later, rather, because we did actually have some really funny sort of conversations about race during those times. Because back then, we used to go over to Juan and Carl's house, and they would pull out the cocaine, or one of the others would pull out cocaine, and we'd all sit in the circle and have these long cocaine amphetamine conversations that were like half narcissistic me, and half sort of like actually getting somewhere with one another on these very complicated subjects that you in on social media would be a minefield. Um, so um, over time, we all became very close. And I told them many times, like, listen, you guys, I am so into you both. I want to, you ever want to like, have a three-way, you ever want to like start exploring something, I'm your boy. Let me know, and I'm totally in it. And this went on for a while. I left the bar. I left the bar temporarily for about a few months. I think about 3 or 4 months to go work in this awful boutique that I'll talk about another time. Um, and it was during this time that there was this one day I got a call from Juan very spontaneously, and he was crying and um, and not making a lot of sense. And so, but what it came out to be was that Carl had 2 days before left the apartment, went in and checked into a hotel, and took a bunch of drugs and killed himself without warning, without any words to anyone, without a note. It was just that's what he did. And I it was such a hard moment because it really, at the time, we were so close. We still hadn't gotten anywhere with the getting together part, but we were growing really close, emotionally attached to each other as friends. And this entire group of people who would just come over and we would hang out, and we all loved Carl. Everybody loved Carl. He was the nicest, sweetest. It's the classic thing. You never know who's going to kill themselves until they do. And it's usually the people you don't expect who would do it. And I never in my life got to thinking that he would be somebody who would feel the way he felt. Now, my first boyfriend killed himself when I was 18. So, I felt like an expert at that point, and I still didn't see it. Carl, one of the most poignant memories for me about Carl was one night at the club. When I first started stripping, I was a little bit apprehensive about um, my receding hairline. It just is what it is. Um, People can be very mean, and I had experiences where in the gay community, in American gay community, especially Americans, um, they can be very superficial about how somebody should look, if they're a sex worker, if they are an actor. What is considered sexy, what is considered not sexy. Gay Americans are just brutal. And, you know, it is what it is. People lose their hair sometimes earlier in age. So I was a bit self conscious about that. And I would always wear a baseball cap. And Carl was the one who just came to me one night and he's like, listen, you don't have to do that. You're absolutely fine the way you are. You're gorgeous. And I needed to hear that. And it was another reason why I loved him so much, because he was just saying the things that you needed to hear at the time. Sorry, I need some water. mm. So, his death meant an end of an era. It meant an end of an era for all of us. Um, of course, everybody went over to help Juan, and Juan was beyond repair. The effect on him is the effect I could say um, I could understand more probably than other people, because of the fact that I had my first boyfriend kill himself, and I know what that does to a person. It's very damaging. And the funeral we got. This is the funeral time. His family, he was out. Carl was out to his family, but his family did not approve of him. They did not approve of Juan. They didn't know that he was a stripper. He was a medical student who I guess he flunked out in his last year, or quit in his last year before becoming a doctor. Something happened and he didn't quite make it at the very end. He was going to be a medical doctor, and his family was very religious, Southern black family who just could not see their way into approving anything about his life in Chicago. And at first, they wanted to bring him down into, I think, where was he from? I mean, he might have been from Alabama. I don't remember. Um, no, I'm afraid I don't remember. It could have been South Carolina. Uh, the first they wanted to bring him over there and have the funeral, but there was a big, massive protest from all of his friends and like this, all the strippers, all their friends outside of the Lucky Horseshoe, and everybody wanted to come. Everybody wanted to say something, and make peace with this, and convinced his family to let them, at least in Chicago, have this funeral. Um, I believe that his body was eventually taken back home and buried because his family couldn't let that go. But at the very least, we had a funeral, and it was entirely sad. And I remember Danny being in absolute tears. And Danny wasn't a person who cried very, I mean, he was emotional, he was sweet, but it was like this moment that we shared where he was just bawling his eyes out over this. And afterwards, um, I didn't see one for about 6, 8 months. And he, when I did see him, he was just in this downward spiral of self-pity and drugs and things. I mean, people can be very judgmental about drug use and sex work, but it happens. It really does happen. There's a lot of, it's a spectrum like anything else. Some people do a little, some people do none, some people do too much. It's no different than anywhere else in life. It's just it's a little more prevalent, I guess, on the surface. So, but he was in grief and he just went for it. And after that, I had to separate myself from him a little bit because I was separating myself from that entire scene of it was getting too dark for me. I had already in the 1990s had my dark period with cocaine and came out of it. That was my New Orleans years. And and when this was like starting to become a bit more prominent in my everyday life as a sex worker in Chicago, I put a glass wall between myself and the community there a little bit and stepped back because I didn't want to fall down that hole again. And so when I saw him in this state and just in such loud mourning, of course, I was hugging him and, kind of listening to him, but at the same time thinking, I've got to get as far away from this as possible, as quickly as possible without hurting his feelings. And so it was shortly after that that I completely dropped out of sex work in Chicago for a good while. For a good while. And that's when I started looking for a normal job. And that didn't go by so well. But that's another story for another day. I don't want to forget these people. They were very, very important to me, especially during this time when I was just setting my roots in Chicago and exploring something that was very fun to me. I loved doing, being this active in sex work. I was in my 20s. I was um, free from any responsibility to anyone but myself. And, I look back on this period with a great amount of sentimental value to it. So um, it's unfortunate what happened with Carl, but I think it indeed happens more often than we think. Drug addiction within the sex worker community. Like I said, I don't want to overplay it, and I don't want to put people in a position where they think all sex workers do drugs. But um, there is a certain amount, depending on where you are in this spectrum of sex work, and very dark, seedy, questionable bars like the Lucky Horseshoe, you are going to find more of a prevalence of heavy drug use than you would in, perhaps some other place. Um, and burnout, a lot burnout and feelings of guilt over sex work. Not everybody was really happy to be a sex worker. Not everybody was me. And I think like some of them, when I remember back now, I remember this back room where, of course, obviously sex acts and prostitution were illegal to perform. But there was this back room where some of the strippers acted like hand job hustlers to customers for very little money. We're talking like $5 or $10. Um, I never did that because I would never, I guess, like, how would I put it? I would never perform a sex act at that time for anyone. You know, it would either be free because I like them or 150 € an hour. And I was very strict about that. Um, but a lot of people did that. And I think that there's like this level of street hustler mentality in such places. And along with that come a lot of people who are just like from broken situations, from or running away from something, or trying to make it through school with absolutely zero support. I know what that's like. Yeah, so the potential for burnout and drug addiction or depression or any of these things like suicide, I would say is substantially higher in these environments. And I don't think that we need to do anything to like change these environments so much as to be more supportive of the people who work in them. It doesn't need new laws or something. It just needs like more compassion, perhaps, for sex workers to be legal, to educate them, to get support for education and services and things that actually help improve the quality of their lives. And um, then the effect will be, I don't know how to end this. The effect will be very positive across the board. So I just wanted to share the story, and now it's out there forever. And have a wonderful, wonderful holidays. Bye bye.